All right. Well, we are just 4 minutes past the hour, so I think we can go ahead and get started. First off, just wanted to welcome everybody to the Q1 2024 showcase, where we're going to go through a few of the things that we've been developing in the past few months. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And this is an open session. I highly encourage people to raise their hands, to put questions in the chat. If there are things that come up that you'd like to ask a question about, please feel free to let us know. We would love to make this an interactive session. And if there's anything that piques your interest and you'd like to hear more about, let us know and we can get you connected. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Let me first point out just some of the work that we've been doing, give an overall summary of what we completed during the past quarter. OCL v3, just as a large, broad category, has gotten a lot of our attention in here. Previously, this was nowhere near as many tickets and points, but in the past few months, we've completed 22 tickets worth 144 points and 142 points, excuse me. This is a pretty big difference from our last one, which only had maybe about 70-ish points that were dedicated to things like design and OCL v3 work. So there's certainly been a lot of work going in here, and Paul will give us a bit of a glimpse into that in the coming days, in the coming slides, excuse me. Additionally, we've been doing some work on OCL v2, which is the term browser and user interface. This has been mostly bug fixes and things just to make sure that people can still do their work while we are developing OCL version 3. The other big category of work that we've been doing, which affects both version 2 and version 3, preps us for what's up to come, is terminology service and API work. There's been a good amount of development work there, particularly on some of our foundational work streams. And these are things like diffs and checksums and other infrastructure pieces that will enable us to do a lot of the things that we need for OCL v3. In addition, we have been doing a few bug fixes here and there, some of them smaller than others, but quite a few tickets that are related to bugs. And then additionally, we've been doing, all of our other work, which is analytics, documentation, CL work, keeping our infrastructure, our OCL chat running, and things like that. There are a lot of a lot of work that was done in this past quarter, which is reflective of a lot of the things that are setting us up for success in OCL v3. So only thing that I wanted to point out is that some planning and road mapping work is not included in this. So even on top of this, there actually is some additional work happening in the group. So I just want to congratulate the OCL team for doing so much in this past quarter, and we are really chugging along here. So one thing that as far as bug fixes, things that you can look forward to in OCL that should now be working. If you are ever creating, using the create similar button for mappings, we had an issue where external ID was carrying over. So that is now fixed and you're able to make your mappings from scratch. You also, when looking at the quick add mapping form, it sometimes was hard to see longer concept names. And I will actually demonstrate this one in just a little bit to show how we fix this. There's also a couple of fixes that are related to the API. And of course, you would see this in the term browser if you were using it, but these happened in the API. So when you are evaluating cascaded references from collections, we've actually fixed it so that it cascades correctly. And when you essentially add a concept from the context of a collection, you are also bringing in that collection's mappings along with it as expected. In addition, there was an issue with search going on where we would not return concepts when the hyphen was used in the search. For example, if there was a concept that had a hyphen in there, sometimes you would not find the results that you're looking for. So that has since been fixed. So, okay, next thing that I want to go into, I want to just show a little bit of what we've been doing in OCL. I'm going to give a very brief look at some of the bug fixes and a couple of the quick features that we've developed in OCL version 2 in the term browser. Shortly after, I will actually throw it over to Paul Adams to talk about some of the v3 developments that have been going on. But first, let me jump over to the term browser. I am working in one of my example test sources here. This is an example of a source that has extra custom content in there that I am creating myself. Just a couple of quality of life fixes I wanted to point out. One, when you are editing concepts, Our update comment form used to be up here. There was a field where you would point out like, hey, here's what I had changed in this concept. Maybe I added some names. We've actually since moved that down to the bottom where if you forget about it, which is pretty common, then instead of kicking you out, having you go back to the top of the screen, it's actually just right here. You can go ahead and get started. So a very relatively small fix, but a lot of people feel much happier about using this form when they don't get kicked up to the top of the form and don't know why. Another quality of life fix in here, particularly with the quick add mapping. One thing that some people were getting confused on was that when you add a mapping and there's a long list of associations, see right here, there's kind of this long list in here that takes up a lot of the screen. You have to scroll. Now that when you add a new mapping, this piece down here was a little bit hidden away. Sometimes people didn't know they had to scroll down for it. This now auto scrolls. So just another quick quality of life fix. And then additionally, if you are adding concepts such as I believe it's HGSIL is the example that I wanted. We actually had a problem before where your concept names were getting cut off if they were too long. So we've actually since fixed that. And I believe we've got Dr. Shaminda's team to thank for that one, for pointing out that bug. So thank you for doing that. So now when you are doing quick adds, not only are you auto scrolling to this piece of the form so that you can quickly do it, but you also are able to see the whole name of the concept so you can do your mapping in the way that you want to and see all the information that's appropriate. So, okay, that's it for version 2 right now. I actually am going to throw it over to Paul Adams right now. Paul, can you go ahead and talk to us about OCL v3 a little bit?
Thank you, Joe. And yeah, thanks to everyone on the call and anyone that's watching later. Excited to walk you through a few of the key features that have been in the design process. And now I think every one of them is in the development process too. Some of them are finished, the first iteration, and some are still being worked on. But here's a flavor of some of the changes you can expect to see once V3, as we're calling it, the version 3 of Term Browser and of OCL is available for you to play around with. Next slide, please, Joe. So a key piece of work that we have been working on in this quarter has been looking at creating and editing of concepts and mappings. Some of you will be familiar with the user interfaces that are available in version 2 of OCL. We've been thinking a lot about efficiency as part of some of the changes that we're rolling out here. And some of the changes that we're introducing as part of V3 really streamline reading, creating, updating, and removing concepts and mappings right in the context of your source. So you can see here that there's a familiar kind of split screen view. However, the creating and editing of these concept and mappings now happens in an edit mode of that same view. So it's a small visual change, but it means that you're able to more easily kind of stay within context of the source or repository that you're working in. And some of the changes that we introduced to enable you to quickly add mappings to concepts in terms of the interaction and the user experience have now been applied to all the different attributes of the concept itself. So you can see a small change at the bottom of the names and synonyms card, which allows you to add a name or synonym right within the view, and that kind of UX is applied across all the different attributes that you might want to work with in a user interface. Next slide, please, Joe. Another key part of the V3 changes and something that you will see evolve and that we hope that we'll be able to kind of evolve along with your needs over time is this idea of a kind of workbench of your relevant information that can be pulled out from anywhere in the application. So you can tap on the menu in the top left and go straight into your lists of repositories, straight into your organizations or create new ones, into content that you follow, and indeed in future maybe be notified of changes to content that you're utilizing in your own collections, in your own sources, and any of the kind of efficiency of use improvements that we might be able to make to simplify and kind of speed up your workflow. So as we kind of think more about other useful utility that this kind of workbench of your personalized links might include, we'd be really happy to hear about other things that we can include in this workbench kind of menu as well. Next slide, please, Joe. Another component that we're really quite excited about and that we've done some initial kind of user testing and validation and development work has begun on is the Searchlight component. And what we're aiming to do here is to give you a much more kind of powerful search experience, whether you're searching your own repositories, your own content, searching more widely in the content that's created by the OCL community, or indeed in some of the places where you need to quickly select a source or an organization or a concept for example, the quick add mappings workflow that Joe just demoed on a previous slide. You can see here that we have this component hover in the screen, and you're able to very quickly contextualize your search without next slide, please, Joe, without the need to filter post the results being displayed on the screen. So on the example screens here, you can see that this user is able to very quickly tap into a bunch of options, examples, things like organizations, repositories, maybe concept classes or users, and then change the context of the search around one particular organization, as this example shows here. So we can see that an organization filter has been applied, and in this case, the World Health Organization. You can continue to type and look for content searching within that organization, or the context of Searchlight will change as you build your search clues as well. So you can see that as well as searching an entire org, we then begin to show repositories that maybe follow that might be interesting that that organization has published. And we're applying this same user experience when you're looking for concepts or mappings or repository, certain types of repositories, looking for users, any place that you're looking to kind of link to other information from OCL, whether it's on your own server or in OCL online. This Searchlight component will kind of adapt to the context of your search. We heard a lot on the initial research for V3 that there was a great deal of time spent refining searches once results were delivered, and so this is the first look at how we want to help you to contextualize that search ahead of time and to sort of save time and to add relevance to the results that you're creating, whatever the kind of search results that you're generating are. That gives you a quick spin through what's been keeping me and the development community busy in the last quarter. We've got a lot to come, and we'd really love to hear your feedback on some of the features that we're developing and some of the changes to the way that organization, the information and your information is kind of organized visually in OCL, some of the efficiency that we're introducing through that kind of information architecture and that organization, as well as in exposing more features in a more from the API in a more kind of intuitive way in the interface as well. So yeah, lots more to come. I'm looking forward to demoing on the next call. And in the meantime, if there's anything that you saw today that you want to follow up on, have ideas about, or even criticisms or feedback on, then please do feel free to reach out. Thanks very much. Back over to you, Joe.
Thank you. I was talking on mute the entire time. I hope I'm not going off the books too much, but I actually would like to go into our V3 development environment just to give a quick preview at one thing in particular, which has been a good amount of work that we've done in this quarter. Let me drag over this. Okay. I won't walk through all of the features here or anything. Paul actually did a great job at showing off some of our searchlight capabilities. I only thing that I wanted to show was in addition to this set of here's all my content, here's content that I'm following, making it easier to get basically navigate across the different repos and organizations and things that you are working in. The one other thing that I wanted to highlight in here, because this has been a good chunk of work and a lot of that API development work specifically, when we're over here in the sidebar and we go into the settings, one thing that we have here in our settings, which is a very new thing that we wanted to just put out here and show that we are working on this since this was a big chunk of work. We've started implementing a canonical URL registry, which essentially, and this is not filled out all the way. What this, there will be more information in the future, but right now, what this canonical URL registry does is lets people have different registries of canonical URLs that essentially allow you to resolve those canonical URLs in a specific way. And where this comes into play is particularly in collections and in mappings. So currently, for those who are familiar with OCL and using it more, a lot of times people are putting relative URLs when they are saying, here is the concept I'm pointing to. So for example, in the to side of your mapping, there would be a little URL that says orgs and sources and points to a specific concept, a specific source or a specific collection. But what that doesn't do is do great at working in multi-server environments. It's trying, basically, when people are trying to make their mappings, make their concepts, and align with the FIRE model. They're trying to resolve things in a more unambiguous way. Canonical URLs actually do a better job at that. And we've been implementing ways that, for example, when people point to a loink.org, that it is known what that means. And there is a loink repository in OCL so that you can resolve that unambiguously, particularly if you import content from FIRE or from other formats. Additionally, one other thing that we're doing is that there is a global registry of canonical URLs, but there is also, if you want canonical URLs to resolve, for example, to maybe your LOINC subset. So if you are, for example, a National Health Data Dictionary owner and you have a subset of LOINC that you've been endorsing, then you can have that same collection that is pointing to loink.org, but you can have it resolved in a different way. So I'm only giving a brief teaser here. I don't want to go fully into the technical details, especially because we are still working through those. But I mostly want to point out that this canonical URL registry is going to make a more robust OCL and one that is more aligned with standards, particularly FIRE. Only other thing that I wanted to show is that we're putting away so that you can test your canonical URLs to essentially say, all right, if I've got loink.org and I'm resolving it through different registries, how is that going to react? How's that going to resolve for me? And just to make sure that this is clear for everybody. So this won't affect your work a whole lot if you are not paying specific attention to, but it is something that can be very powerful for the people who want to take advantage of it. So we'll talk more about this in the future. So, okay, jumping back over to the slides, I now want to get into some of our highlights for content specifically. Latest CL release is now March 2024 edition. And thanks to Andy Cantor, who's on the call right now, just wanted to summarize your release notes that this new release includes concepts for partners in health, MSF, Kenya EMR. We've also got WHO ATC drug codes that continue to be added to medications. We're getting ICD-11 codes added in here incrementally. And also for anybody interested in the WHO measles smart guideline work, there are some new concepts that are coming up to align with that. And Andy, anything else you want to point out for this? No worries if not. I just want to give you space if you'd like.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. No, I think we're going to continue to meet those gaps in the smart guideline work, and anyone who has any specific requests, please get them to me via email or Slack. Thanks.
Awesome. Much appreciated. All right. Other content update. We came through on our promise from last time to say that the 2023 update of SNOMED GPS, the global patient set, is available on OCL Online. This is available at this URL, or if you just search for SNOMED GPS in the app, then you will be able to find this. There are some new concepts updated in here, a few retired concepts from last time. And this is still that globally available subset of SNOMED that we have available on OCL Online. So please feel free to take a look at this. Other things, I want to go through a few community highlights in here. There's some really good work going on around the community. Oh yeah, hi John, how's it going?
Hey, good. Hey, yeah, actually, just wondered if I could say a couple words about some of the foundational work streams that are underway.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you touched on one, but I think people here would be interested to know. Well, I should have had my spreadsheet ready before I started talking, but
is that the tracker spreadsheet?
So,
I'm happy to pull it up real quick if needed.
Oh, sure, yeah. Maybe you could just pull it up to the foundational work streams tab. Thanks, Joe.
There we go.
So there are a handful of these, what we're calling foundational work streams, which are kind of larger under the hood efforts to add functionality, and this includes things that are helping us to align better with FHIR, because there are some differences in the OCL information model and the FHIR information model. Some of these are to support V3 and improved user workflows, and some of them are taking advantage or adding additional features to take advantage of, like the collection model that OCL supports, which is quite powerful, but a lot of the behaviors there you can really only interact with in the API, and you have to kind of custom write your own scripts and things. So we're trying to kind of bring those things out to support V3 development, and then support the Smart Dictionary initiative, which is really about improving user workflows. So the one that Joe already showed is the canonical URL registry, and that's essential because we're a multi-tenant environment, and the same canonical URL could be published for many repos in an OCL environment, and so you have to have a registry that controls how those URLs are resolved. So Joe showed the work that's in progress there, but it's getting close to final testing, and could eventually will soon be deployed. And that's one that should be transparent until you get to a place where you need it. The async task management is another interesting one where there are lots of large and long-running tasks that OCL processes, such as preparing large exports, running large imports, re-indexing when some larger changes have been made, running like a validation schema on a large repository, many others, but those are some good examples. We've kind of long been trying to overhaul that model to improve its performance and reliability. It's an area where OCL servers, it's the most common place where we would have kind of tasks failing. So, and most of that is, well, actually at this stage, once that's in production, we should see pretty much all of those resolved. Diffs and checksums is another really exciting one. Checksums are now available for all concepts, mappings, and repositories. And so essentially every resource in OCL now has a checksum, but we're not yet recommending, they're kind of beta. We're not yet recommending that people start building APIs against them, because we're still validating the way that those checksums are generated is not going to change. And based on some use cases that are being developed. So the first interesting features that will rely on checksums that we're going to roll out soon are the ability to do a diff between two repository versions, and then the ability to generate a change log automatically using that diff. So this would be a really awesome feature. You know, for example, when Andy releases a new version of CL, I think right now you prepare that the change log manually by running some queries in the database, and it that's a tedious manual process. This will give a much more detailed change log that we could then in the future start building like automated notifications against and things like that. So I'm really excited to move that out. And then the next three that are in progress here, I won't go as into detail as much. These are still a bit earlier in the process. We're introducing repo types that are beyond just sources and collections. So OCL will continue to use sources and collections under the hood, but for users, you might prefer to be interacting directly with a FHIR code system, value set, concept map, or an OpenMRS concept dictionary. So we're introducing this, like what we're calling strongly typed repository types, so that you could actually select the repo type you're interested in, and OCL will handle under the hood, how it's using sources and collections to deliver on that. And then the final, and this one about latest released is really interesting. I think you all know we have a latest feature which helps to resolve to the latest release of a repo. But some of the ways that that's managed are not ideal for a manager of a source or the content. So we want to have a clearer process for all users are always using the latest release of a repo, but when you're editing it and managing it, then you have access to head. And so we want to have a more intuitive workflow around the use of the head and the latest release and how that's managed in OCL behind the scenes. And then finally, we're also working, especially with Kenya and the Ministry of Health there, that has used OCL for their National Health Terminology Service. They're interested in implementing a more sophisticated approach to management of user accounts and permissions and roles. And so we're starting to define requirements there, and would plan to bring that to the community for feedback in the next couple of months as well, before we kind of shift into implementation. So plenty of other foundational work streams that will come up in over the next 6 months, but these are kind of longer running projects that, as they get closer to being done in the API, then we'll start working on the UI work, which will make them a little bit more accessible. So I don't know if there's any questions on this or. Great. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and let me just jump into some community highlights here, because we do want to thank and appreciate a lot of the good work that's going on around here. First, starting with an OpenMRS Academy course that was related to concept management using OCL with OpenMRS. This is an Academy course that consists of basically a 1-hour demonstration of using OCL and what it means to use it for OpenMRS. This is something that's available on the OpenMRS Academy, where you can even take the quiz, and there might be some certifications to go with it. I'm not totally sure, but a good resource for education out there. We also have the video itself on OCL's YouTube if people would like to review that. I also want to point out that thanks to the HL7 Brazil team, and I see Italo and Beatriz on here, just want to thank you both for making connections with us. We actually got to meet with some HL7 members from Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Argentina, and we are just making more and more partnerships in South America in particular, and very much appreciative of the opportunity and really looking forward to where this can take us.
Oh.
Yes, is there a comment or anything? All right, no worries. Okay, let me jump over to another community highlight. I don't see any partners and health colleagues on here, but we do want to give them their kudos because they are now managing their OpenMRS concept dictionary with OCL for 4 country site implementations. And in particular, they, of course, their colleagues are also involved in this, but Ellen Ball and Michael Seaton have been giving leadership and supporting this work. And we really want to congratulate the great work that they've been doing. And as Ellen said in her OpenMRS talk post, this is a milestone in supporting many countries, multiple languages, and a global PIH team. It is a transparent and consistent way to share our dictionary and will save deployment time. So congratulations to the partners and health team in making this jump. And we're really excited to continue to support you. And one other thing, we've got a couple of projects and partnerships coming on. John, do you mind if I throw it to you just to quickly talk about the HL7 work and the WHO Smart TS work? Or I'm happy to, if not, no worries either way.
Yeah, sure, Joe. So we kicked these projects off late last year, and I think we might have talked about this a little bit in our last quarterly showcase, but we've now been working with HL7 and the WHO for the last 3 months, and have some progress that we'd love to kind of update everybody on. So for the HL7 project, this is focused on building out some of OCL's FHIR core capabilities, and getting to a stage where the HL7 community could begin to experiment with the use of OCL in its infrastructure for authoring and management of value sets. So that'd be, I think, if you're on this call, you probably understand that management and authoring of value sets that is complicated. There's not a lot of great user-friendly tooling to support this, especially in the open source global goods space. And so they're interested in seeing if this tool could be applicable for some of those use cases within the HL7 community. But to support that, we need to have more features around our FHIR import and export capabilities. And so the first major one would be the ability to just point to a FHIR NPM package, and OCL would automatically process just the terminology resources in that package and load it up. So if you went to like the FHIR NPM registry, there's lots of packages there, and we're really excited that soon you'll be able to just say, grab these 10 packages, and suddenly you'll have a terminology service that's preloaded with all of the main reference vocabularies you're going to need. I wouldn't say the reference vocabularies. There's actually the big ones like SNOMED and LOINC and things like that are not available to those packages. This would be more the administrative code sets and value sets. So the additional one would be support for XML and FHIR XML and not just JSON. Right now, that'll only be on the import side, but in the future we might continue to build that out. That's using the FHIR validator, which is a package that's maintained by the HL7 community that also supports lots of additional features. And so over time, we'd probably be able to expose even more of the validator features through OCL as well, which would be really awesome. So, and then on the export side, right now you can interact with a single FHIR resource, but over time we'd probably be able to support grabbing a bundle of FHIR terminology resources and packaging those up for you. But I think the most important thing that's happening here is, at least for the long term, is that this project is forcing us to solve some of the tricky information model alignment questions that we have and between OCL and FHIR, so that like that what we talked about earlier, the ability to create a FHIR code system directly rather than create an OCL source that you can expose as a FHIR code system. we want users to be able to interact with FHIR resources directly and not have to think about those or know what's going on under the hood. So that'll result in a capability statement, a terminology capabilities resource, and eventually an implementation guide that will clarify the model for users. So and then, well, of course, once all this is there, we'd also be loading a lot more content into OCL Online and making that available to the community. So the WHO Smart Terminology Service project is also kind of leveraging these core FHIR capabilities, but building on top of it even more. And so the WHO is preparing to deploy OCL in their infrastructure to create a smart terminology service. And it's in Microsoft Azure instead of AWS. So Rafal, thanks for posting some of these links here. It just put a link in the chat to a repo for the OCL Azure deployment configuration. And so once that's available, we're in the WHO infrastructure. The goal of that is to start supporting and exploring the application of a WHO-hosted TS to support the SMART guideline authoring and adaptation processes. So there's a whole lot there, but Joe recently presented an approach to where you're managing your terminology resources in OCL, and you could export those to use them in an implementation guide build process. So which is kind of one of the foundational operations when you're working in FHIR that you need to do. And eventually we'd have it so the IG build tool could point to OCL directly, so you could just manage your resources in one place and it'd be connected to the build process. So a lot more that we'll update on the next showcase, and as these things kind of move from development into actual and deployed into our production environments. But hopefully this gives you at least a glimpse into where things are headed.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
Joe.
And we do have, I see, Rafal, that you've joined in. I believe you've been, you've been certainly putting links in the chat, so thank you very much for that. Is there anything else you want to add on the FHIR work or about just OCL infrastructure work in general?
Thanks. Not in particular. So for the WHO deployment, I would add that we deploy to Kubernetes cluster. And if you go to that OCL Azure repository, you'll have a ready-to-use recipe for deploying to any Kubernetes cluster. We'll keep this public, so you can set it up yourself as well and experiment. We'll be updating the repo as needed in the future.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that, Rafal. Okay. Next, let's jump into the last leg before we get into some group discussion. Just looking ahead to Q2 of 2024. Casey, can I throw it over to you very briefly for our Year of the Community slide?
Sure thing. So we have been, the OCL community planning team has been working on a lot of activities so far this year, focusing highly on building and supporting the community around OCL. So far we have published our community roadmap. We got some input on that early on in the year, and that is now available on the website. We've had lots of community calls, from our developer calls to our community planner calls to showcases like this one. We've had some initiatives out there like smart dictionaries and the OCL v3, which others can speak to better than I can, I'm sure. And we have lots of community events lined up for OCL to participate in. We have OHI 24 coming up later on in the year. We've also participated in several OpenHIE calls, HL7 hackathons, Global Good Innovator Summit. We're expecting a lot of great things to come up this year. And as a sneak peek in the coming months, We are going to continue working on documenting OCL community's history. So we're working on setting up what the OCL origin story is and how we can promote that to the community and beyond the community as well. Reviewing and strengthening some structures and processes around the community. So making sure we have things like a code of conduct, our governance structure, making sure we're all ready to go on the community side of things in terms of structure. We've started some partnership conversations with some global goods, thinking of those who are strong leaders in the OCL community and trying to find ways to formalize those relationships that have been growing and building over, you know, I think OCL has been under development for over a decade now, perhaps. And so just building and formalizing those relationships that have already started. Kicking off some OCL user groups and starting to develop what those will look like. Some information on OCL fellowship. Those last two items, someone could speak to that probably better than I can if you have questions. And one of the really exciting things we're working on is a new website to be published. So the OCL, I forget the name of the URL, if it's ocl.org or I think it's openconceptlab.org. Oh, great, it's the second one. So that will soon look a lot similar to the term browser, but Paul Adams is working really, really hard on the design and features on that website. So I can tell you right now from what I've seen, it's looking really great. And so that should be coming soon in the coming months. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Casey, very much. All right. Very briefly, the 2024 roadmap is on OCL, the community website. Please feel free to take a look at it. Lots of what is coming up in the coming quarters is available there at a high level and in more depth. But I do want to jump a little bit quickly into what the upcoming initiatives are. And John, I appreciate you were able to speak to some of these in your foundational work streams. One thing in particular you can hear us talking about soon is just general repository management. So this is a big part of the Smart Dictionary initiative, which we might change the name to Smart Repositories, but you know, we will see about that. We want to make sure that there are strong workflows for repository setup, content validation, versioning, release management, reference management, and much, much more. This is I made this box big because it is a big initiative and we would love to get feedback on that. So very much would appreciate community engagement on it, and we'll be sure to ask for feedback on specific things too. Additionally, things that you can expect us to see, John already touched on repo types a little bit, whether you're setting up OpenMRS dictionaries or Fire code systems or many other repo types with just some minimal configuration. Gives you a real jump start and helps your repo work in the way that you expect it to. Another thing that we are working on in the very near future is user roles and permissions. And we actually even have a product call where we've been talking about this lately. And thanks to University of Nairobi's Kevin, who's been attending and actually giving us some good input and requirements. We're hoping to transition to a more role-based approach for managing actions, whether you're working within an organization or repository or permissions for the server as a whole. And then last thing is the management of releases, where we're just optimizing what our version release process looks like. And that might include, for example, making downstream updates to your collections. It might be allowing people to respond to the upstream changes that they are receiving. For example, if CL puts out a new release, it would be great if, you know, if your content will be affected by it, you get notified of it and you're able to respond to it efficiently. So these are things that you can expect us to be talking about. Stay connected with us because we will often be talking about many of these topics through these channels here. For more formal content, we're publishing on LinkedIn these days at Open Concept Lab. We've got our mailing list, of course, which I think many of you are on. And for many of these technical topics, we will be taking these to OCL chat where they are open for feedback and anybody is welcome to join. It is your same login as an OCL online account. So just bring your account over there and let's get chatting. So that is the end of our showcase for today. Now, I would like to open up the floor for discussions, questions. What interested you? What would you like to see more of? This is open for all. And I do, Andy, I think you had actually put a comment in the chat probably about a half hour ago at this point. Might want to distinguish between a URL and a URI, for example. John, are you able to speak to that? I'm actually not privy to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, Andy, it's a good comment. We're using URL because that's what Fire uses, and Fire, the specification actually talks about this because it technically should be a URI, but I think if I remember right, there were two reasons that Fire decided to use URL instead of URI. One is they want to encourage the behavior that if you use, they want your URIs to resolve to an actual URL, so that if you want to get more information on it, then you already have the right URL to get that. And then I think the second one was just by that they'd already had legacy kind of tooling and resource definitions and things. So yeah, we might want to clarify that in the UI somehow, but I don't know if you want to add more on that, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's more about in terms of also kind of defining what that functionality is intended to capture. So, and being a terminology service, it seems like we should use the right terminology. But as I understand it, the difference is that a URI is kind of the prefix or the the code. For example, the example that we used about a particular code source being able to know that it's always LOINC, that you're not going to necessarily want to capture a link to every single code in LOINC in your repository. What you would care to have is the URI, which is essentially the prefix part of the URL, which then the code would be appended to as part of any kind of Fire query and so on. So that was all. I mean, I have, spent, I think, a fair amount of time just trying to figure out all the differences between these acronyms and what they actually mean. But I think it was more related to what we think is the use of the repository. And I thought it was less about a link to a specific code all the way to its URL, although that might be the URL for a collection, let's say, that you've created within OCL, so self-referential stuff. But for things like codes and code systems and things like that, that they're really URIs, and maybe we should it's more in the documentation than the UI per se.
Yeah, those are all good points, Paul. I hope you were following that one. I think in the UI, we probably want to think about how we make sure there's clarity around URL and URI. And
so I've got to drop, unfortunately, to get my kids to school, but I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity to bring the specific terminology use cases through to the OCL platform. And, I think there's been a large amount of technical development work and the foundational work that OCL is doing to ensure that we're meeting certain requirements from Partners in Health or WHO or HL7 and things like that. But I think also getting information about specific workflows, the content requirements that that are driving the use of OCL. It shouldn't just be a checkbox. I'm assuming that we're actually people are actually using it for benefit to their use cases. making sure that those are captured. And we're going to be doing a lot more on the CL side, for example, in making sure that we have an issue board, a GitHub, to make sure that we're capturing those requests from you. And I will continue to be making an effort to expand the team from a content point of view to support specific content needs, whether it's a smart guideline gaps that you're trying to do, or whether it's like the ICD-11 migration, which I think a lot of people are sort of expecting and waiting once the licensing issues have been resolved with WHO, to having CL be fully supporting ICD-11 automatically. Thanks, guys, for a great presentation, and I'm sorry I missed the first few minutes of it. I will check it out on the recording.
Yeah, it'll be on YouTube. Thank you, Andy. Much appreciated. All right, we've got just 5 minutes left here. Are there any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand. Please feel free to make comments in the chat. We would love to hear from you. All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'm not. Thank you, Italo. Have a good one too. I think if there's no other comments or questions, everybody could use a couple of minutes between their now and the next meeting. So thanks everybody for attending. We really appreciate it, and thank you for continuing to be a part of the growing and thriving OCL community. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.